Going on, this is Jacob Vial for a build update for my single 12-inch subwoofer box build. So, got my ugly little sealed box out of here. Definitely been doing some testing, so a lot of the holes and tape and all of the stuff in there is because of all of the wood that I added and removed a couple times, and I just tape over the holes. But what I'm doing now is about to do some calculations to kind of put on video since a lot of the times a lot of people don't really show a lot of this on video, so I'm going to do it. So I'm pretty much going to show you as I go with, hey, this is the mathematical stuff I'm identifying with my box, where I'm going to be with my sealed enclosure, where my ported enclosure is, what my port area is going to be, some of the things that I'm kind of analyzing in my head as I go, and I'm sharing it on video so that way you guys can kind of see this is the kind of things that car audio subwoofer box builders do, especially SPL people, when it comes to what they want to do to get louder. So there's the sealed box that I had in there. So for anything, if anybody hasn't seen updated videos, so what this did was I actually had the box, let's see if I can get it the way I had it. It was in here, there you go. And you see how it was a tight fit? I got about a quarter inch clearance, half-inch clearance right there. And I slid the box all the way back. That's why you didn't see any tape in that area. So that's what you saw there. And then I just taped around the edges to seal it off. It would have made more sense if I would have added that extra half inch, 5/8 or whatever. But, oh well, learn as you go. So what I'm going to be doing now is identifying my specs in my sealed box, specs in my ported box, and kind of figure out what I'm going to be doing with this ported enclosure in this fourth order with the sealed box. If I'm going to be building a new one or if I'm going to go with what I got. And pretty much discuss commentary as I go. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is the stuff that normally people would do off camera, but I'm going to do it on camera. So what I'm about to do now, got my tape measure and I got my phone where I go to 12 volt, where I'm actually going to be measuring my width, depth, height, thickness on a calculator. With my tape measure, I'm going to be measuring this out and then kind of fine tuning where I plan to be, knowing my ratio, knowing where my port area is going to be planned to be, and kind of identifying what my volume is in my ported enclosure as well as what I'm going to be having in my sealed enclosure. And of course, every system varies, so this is all in testing and tuning. So whenever you hear people say tweaking their box, well, this is part of it. So, all right, let's go ahead and get this going. I'll talk as I go, keep it interesting. So right now what I'm going to be doing is measuring depth first. So I got my depth in there all the way back. My depth is 29 because I have two baffles there, 1.5 inches. So my depth is 29. See, 29. I don't really count the port in this, so I'll just go with 29. So my internal depth is 29. All right, got that? So I'm going to go with the 29 for my depth. So I got 29 depth. Now my height, I'm 100% it's 14, but I'm going to do it anyway. Measure it just because it's on camera. So we got 14. Slightly under, but I'll just go with 14. Check a couple of areas. Right at 14, a little over. Depends on where it is. And then, of course, you always want to check inside the box too, because depending on how big it is. Yep, like 14 and 1/8. 14 and 1/8. So I'll just put 14 in there for the height. So that way I know my height is right at 14. Okay. I hope you guys like this kind of content. Like and comment. Let me know what y'all think so far. If you have any suggestions or anything y'all have questions on. Alright, so now the width. So what I'm going to do here is measure the width, how wide my box is from end to end. Sorry if it's a little ugly. Alright, so 35. There you go. So right at 35. Touch off. Edge to edge. Let me measure again, but that on camera. All the way at the back. 35, measure the height, 35, yep. So right at 35 wide. This is internal volume I'm measuring to get the ported side. So this is like a really big box ported. And there we go, put my width in at 35, okay. And my thickness is 0 on this because I actually have my internal volume. I'm not removing baffles. That's what that thickness is. There's no thickness since it's 0, since there's nothing removed. So my internal volume net, this is not gross, this is net, because gross would be with the wood. So 8.2, so let me go ahead and write that down. Got my marker, permanent marker. So 8.2 net. So I know my box is right at 8.2 net, okay? So now I'm gonna go ahead and, I got my 8.2 net box. So now I'm gonna identify what my actual sealed enclosure is on a gross. Gross as in, what is the whole outside? How much space does that box take up from the whole thing? And then we'll identify what the ratio was when I had my actual 10 in there, so I can kind of see exactly the true specs of what it was. All right, so let's do that real quick. Measure this out. So we got 13.5 by 13.5 by 14.5. Yep, so 13.5, 13.5, 14.5. So what we're gonna do here, and that's thickness 0, since it's 0, since I'm going from the outside. So 13.5, 13.5. My depth was 14.5. So my interior volume, well, pretty much the volume of this box here, that fit in there, was right at 1.5. So that box is 1.5. So I'm just gonna put box equals 1.5. All right, so that's how much space I took out. But this is the trick with these ratios and fourth orders. You don't go by the outside, you go by the internal specs for the sealed, for the subwoofer. So all I gotta do is subtract those two numbers. So I got my calculator. I'm gonna subtract 8.2 minus 1.5. So I got 6.7. So that's max, just everything. I'm just gonna call that net. I know what they are. So that was 6.7. So 6.7 cubes, and forget all the ugly handwriting and all. Anyway, so I'm at 6.7 cubes net. Now we're gonna identify what my sealed box was, the actual internal box specs. So I'll measure the inside, which what I'll do is measure inside of the box, edge to edge. So it's 12 by 12, 12 by 12, and 13. 12 by 12 by 13. All right, 12, 12, 13. So we'll find out our internal. I already did all of this myself, but just to double cross check again on camera, plus for me to share with you guys. So 12, 12, and 13. 12 width, 12 height. The depth was 13. 0 thickness since I'm not doing baffle removal. So we're gonna be right at 1.08, so 1.1. So the box is, that's gross, net is 1.1. So my sealed box, this is just for me. It'll be taped over or masked up or covered, just so I can remember without having to write it on a piece of paper. So 1.1 net. All right, so now this is the part that everybody cares the most about, ratio. So now I know my box is 6.7 cubes net, 1.1 net for the sealed box. So 6.7 divided by, oh, I gotta do one more thing. So since I was inverted, my box is actually ported enclosure. I subtract 0.2 from that, so it's actually 6.5. Since 0.2 for the subwoofer displacement, so it's actually 6.5, not 6.7. You subtract the subwoofer mount since it was inverted. If it was in the sealed box, then I would subtract 0.2 from this side. So my sealed box, which raises the ratio. Anyway, so 6.5 divided by 1.1. So I was right at a 5.9. So a 6-to-1 ratio, fourth order. So I actually thought I was a 5.5-to-1. I was a little bit bigger ratio than that, inverted. So now that's a 6-to-1 ratio inverted when I had the singleton inverted. Now let's do it with it mounted regular. So that would be 6.7 divided by, that would be 0.9. So a 7.5 to 1 ratio. So my ratio dropped almost 1.5, almost 2, which is a drastic change, especially when you're going from a 1 to 1 to a 2.5 to 1 or a 2.5 to 4. But when you go to the bigger ratios, what happens is that's just really squeezing in that sub, getting as much output as you can on a 1 or 2 one-note wonder box is what they call them. So anything over like a 4 or 5 to 1 ratio becomes a one-note wonder. And as you up that ratio, you're getting even louder and you lose even more bandwidth. So, all right, so I know my current specs on the 10-inch side. So that's part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 as I go into 12-inch side. So identifying what my specs are going to be for the 12-inch side for when I bring the box in the subwoofer in. So I'll see you on part 2.